Taylor Swift revealed a secret about the Tortured Poets department yesterday that explained a lot of things that a lot of us have been wondering ever since the album released. Let's discuss it. So obviously, ever since this album was announced, a lot of people have been like, what in the world actually is the Tortured Poets department, right? Because Taylor has never quite explained it. We have just inferred what she meant by it. And I think a lot of us, after hearing the album, were kind of taking the Tortured Poets department to be like a school, like the Professor Xavier school for, oh crap, I can't remember, I'm a bad X-Men fan, but you know, the school that Professor Xavier had in the X-Men that was set aside for kids that had unique talents or whatever. I had interpreted the TTPD, and a lot of other people, I think, just based on discourse online, as being some sort of high academia type place where you studied poets, or where poets studied poems, or something of that nature. And I think that made a lot of people then confused about the album, right? Because there are a lot of themes of asylums and being sent away and sort of being in a mental health crisis such that you have to be sent in for inpatient treatment. And I think because of that weird juxtaposition where it was kind of academia, but it was kind of like the asylum, was making a lot of people like, wait, like what exactly is going on here? I personally thought it was just her using multiple themes that just kind of happened to be related to poets, right? Because a lot of poets went into high academia type spaces, a lot of poets went into asylums. It just kind of tends to work together like that. But we got some behind the scenes from a Fortnight music video because there are Easter eggs for the Gracie Abrams song Us that Taylor is on. So because the song released yesterday, Taylor released a lot of behind the scenes stuff for Fortnight to kind of hint at that Easter egg and such. And in the video, Taylor explains to Post Malone what the Tortured Poets department actually is. And she says, "In my mind, the Tortured Poets department is a government municipal building where they study the behavior and mind of poets." And that totally made me take a 180 about things. Now, Miss Taylor Allison Swift, what she loves doing is not giving us all the information at the same time. She is a mastermind at just feeding us information, keeping us baby stepping along the plot as she hands us more and more information, more and more context, so we have to like recontextualize the entirety of her body of work in our heads, and that makes us all go back and crap, I need to listen to this track, I need to listen to this track, because we all want to know what are these things, what are these references that she's making, what has changed, what is this additional context telling us? And I think that's one of the smartest things that she's done in terms of staying on the charts. Even with older songs, when you are consistently providing new information that recontextualize the old information that you have given your fans, it really makes your fans reinvest themselves into your work. And I have to admit, I really like the concept of the Tortured Poets department a lot more from this perspective. I think the kind of like high academia, Ivy League kind of vibes that a lot of people were getting was kind of a little bit off-putting, I think. I don't know. It's one thing when you actually go to an Ivy League school and you like flaunt it about all the time. It's a little bit different when you like have not actually been to an Ivy League university. It just feels a little pretentious, I guess. But seeing her treat this more as an institution that would be studying her and kind of treating her like an inmate or like an animal or like something that is not wholly human, that is just there for humans to study and to analyze, it just makes so much sense. A, from the context of just like her entire life. Ever since her childhood, she has been on display for the speculation and discussing and discourse of the entirety of the media. And there's a really fine line that's kind of hard to draw, right? Because I do feel like good faith criticism is one of the most important things to an artist and an artist's overall success and the longevity of their career. People need to learn what they are doing wrong or what they are doing that their audience doesn't necessarily like, so that they can make decisions about like, okay, am I going to alienate that part of my audience because my art and what I believe about it is most important? Or am I going to be like, well, wait, this isn't that important to me, why don't I just give the people what they want? So I think we need to have good faith criticism for artists, right? What I don't think we need is the media to be making that speculation in bad faith expressly to make money off of you and to control what other people think of you. There are a lot of ways that the media acts in regards to starlets that is just incredibly inappropriate and unethical, and that we do not discuss enough. And we act like it has gotten better, but it clearly has not, because we still see so many articles speculating about pop stars being pregnant, and like that stuff is just, it's frankly inappropriate. Like, unless somebody is bringing you attention to their pregnancy, you shouldn't be speculating about them. For all you know, these people have had dozens of miscarriages and would love to have a pregnancy that they keep, but they know that this pregnancy is going to go too. I wish more fans would consider that. And I wish the media would stop blurring the line between fan and artistic analysis and like actual genuine criticism versus just sensationalist slandering and trying whatever you can to stick so you can make a buck that day. Now, before we go any further, I want to discuss the Britney Spears of it all because I think that's very integral. Many of you will remember that in 2007 and 2008, Britney Spears went through a very public, very media speculated about nervous breakdown and ended up being put in a conservatorship that stripped her of her rights and kind of turned her into a performing monkey for most of her life. And I think one thing that's really important to consider is that at that stage in Taylor's career, she was really working with a lot of people that had helped form Britney Spears' career. So at least like her management was very familiar with Britney and things like that. And aspects of Taylor's career were probably influenced by what happened to Britney. But also, I think most children do not believe that their parents are capable of doing something like that to them. But even if Scott and Andrea Swift could never be the type of parent to put Taylor under a conservatorship, I have to assume that seeing what happened to Britney, having theories about what was going on behind the scenes, because you hear rumors, but I mean, because we heard rumors for many, many years as fans before we got confirmation about the conservatorship. It only stands to reason that Taylor probably heard unsubstantiated rumors before that too. And there's probably been some aspect of her brain that has been like, crap, could this happen to me? And especially when she's using all of this asylum imagery, but also all of this circus imagery. Because a lot of people kind of dismiss pop music and don't really think about it too much. But Britney Spears kind of used the circus metaphor to explain the feeling of being a performer, of being a young person in the industry, right? And Taylor has taken on that metaphor as well and seems to be using it similarly. And that, I think, is a really important context to consider because a lot of people are like, what does Taylor Swift have to be depressed about? It really seems like basically every child that enters in the industry gets hurt to some degree, and I would wager that almost every child star that gets famous young, but especially the ones that get super famous and have like every aspect of their life, their behavior, how they dress, overly scrutinized and like hated upon by the media. It doesn't matter how much money you have. There are certain things that do harms that need to be healed, that you actually need to go through a proper healing process. And for a lot of people, that does involve some form of institutionalization. Not for everybody, and I do think that our culture overvalues that stuff because people profit off of that. So obviously they're going to say, oh yes, this is the only way that you can heal. There are a number of ways that people can heal, and it really just depends on who they are as an individual. So I'm not going to be the first person to make the assertion that poets and mental illness go hand in hand, right? And obviously a lot of poets have been institutionalized in one form or another over the years, or their family has needed to put something in effect, or their life has ended prematurely because they didn't have access to the supports that they needed. And I think Taylor is really reflecting upon that, but also Taylor is reflecting upon the fact that the government has had a lot of interest in scrutinizing poets for many years. And one of the big reasons for that is because of the goals of the original Romantics poets and the new Romantics movement of the 80s. Both of these movements were kind of designed to enact social change and control what is perceived as normal via making art. And we know, obviously, that Taylor is very attached to this new Romantics ideal, and in very many ways, I think that she is trying to change the barometer on what is normal and what we think is normal. I mean, just think about how we talked about age gap relationships, A, before the first version of All Too Well came out, B, between All Too Well and All Too Well 10-minute version. And now, after All Too Well 10-minute version, we are really having a lot more discussions on whether or not these relationships are inappropriate. Artists really have a lot of power to push the barometer on what we feel is socially acceptable and what we feel is acceptable about ourselves. Another thing that has gotten poets institutionalized is being LGBTQ, and a lot of people have made connections between the Fortnight music video and things like conversion therapy. And Taylor has made a lot of connections between Tortured Poets Department and Dead Poets Society. And whilst Dead Poets Society is not necessarily intended to be like gay love, there are two boys at the boarding school who act in a manner that infers that they have a deep emotional connection beyond just being friends. And every time the LGBTQ gets mentioned in the context of Taylor Swift, you have somebody in the comments who's like, oh my god, you can't say gay around Taylor Swift, she hates that. No, if Taylor Swift didn't want queer interpretations of her art, she wouldn't put so much queer symbolism in her art. She knows basically every famous lesbian worth knowing. She could run all of her songs past them to make sure there weren't references every 5 bars that are a little ding, you know? Regardless of Taylor's orientation, it is definitely a form of interpretation that she has leaned into over the years. And especially when you consider the context of Fox News speculating that Taylor Swift was a Pentagon psyop, I really do understand why Taylor is leaning into this like government agency kind of thought. And because 3-letter government agencies have historically treated pop celebrities who had liberal-leaning views as threats to the country, see the Red Scare, it feels particularly apt, especially in this moment in time. I have to assume that government agencies probably keep tabs on Taylor Swift, and I can't imagine the FBI being overly aware of the fact that I exist. That's not something I aspire to in life. Anyway, that's all that I have to say about this. If you want my overall discussion on TTPD, I've done this video on it. I've also done a video on Down Bad and sci-fi symbolism, and a video on TTPD and how it is a soundtrack to Dead Poets Society. That one just recently went up and it was held in copyright hell forever, so if you don't mind checking that out, that would be amazing. If you are new here, I'm going to be doing Taylor Swift videos every week, every other week now. So if you like that stuff, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe because that really helps me out as a small channel. I am just shy of 2,000 subscribers now, so if I could hit 2,000 subscribers, that would be great.